Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how you can carry out web scraping um, quite easily and just with a few lines of code on Python, but most importantly for free. There's obviously lots of web scraping tools out there on the internet, and these are very useful for digital marketers, both performance marketers as well as SEO professionals. And while most of them are pretty good, I suppose I obviously have used a few of them, but one problem that you will run into while trying to use them is that most of them are not really free, and whichever ones are, they are just free for a very limited period of time. So mostly you will have to go for a trial period in order to use these scraping tools, and sometimes they can also be a little time consuming in the way they work. But this is a method that you can actually use. You just have to get your head around some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. But once you do that, um, this is going to be something that will remain free forever. So without further ado, let's just dive right in. There's actually not too much code here. Just a lot of the stuff that you're seeing is actually the bulk of the stuff is simply the output. So the actual code is quite little. But you start here with pip install beautiful soup. You can leave out the LangChain part actually. I'm going to talk about that later on. By the way, this code is not generated by me. This is done by James Phoenix and a few other guys. They have done a really good job, working on this kind of stuff. So do check out their stuff. I'll leave the link to their website as well in the video. But what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to try and use that code and do some other stuff here. I've already made some tweaks. I'll explain in a minute. So first of all, you have to install something called the Beautiful Soup. So Beautiful Soup is, I think, a package. Yeah, so it's a Python package, and essentially it's used for parsing. So parsing, by the way, is the method by which you can go through all the elements in a web page. So it's the process of analyzing a string of symbols, as you can see. So essentially, you just break down everything within the web page, for instance, and get its HTML constants, and then you can just grab hold of each of the parts, and that's essentially the process that's going to help you do the scraping. So once you've installed that, so this has will take some time. So this has a bit of a time taking process. So I've already done this. This installation has been done, and then you have to install something called the AIO HTTP. And if I just jump into their documentation site, you'll see that it's an asynchronous HTTP kind of server for something another thing called asyncio, which we're going to require just in a while, and it's also used in Python environments. So you have to import that, and then you have to also import Beautiful Soup from the BS4 package that you just downloaded. So BS4 is the same as Beautiful Soup here, and once you have downloaded that, you have to import Beautiful Soup. So it's kind of like a sub package within it, or you can say it's the instance from this package. So once that is done, you can install Nest Asyncio, and as you can see here, some additional information is provided by the ones who developed this piece of code. Once again, I'm not a full-fledged Python developer, but I know enough Python. I've been delving into Python and working with it for the last several years now, almost 3 or 4 years, I suppose. I've been a little bit in R, but mostly in Python, and that's because I have been training myself on data science and mostly a trained data analytics person. But Python is super useful, so you should try and use that. But you don't have to do that if you just want to do web scraping. Web scraping is going to be fairly easy to do if you just follow along. You don't have to be really an expert in Python to do that. So once that is installed, so these three were just installation pieces of code. Now we actually move on to the web scraping part. So the first one will be about scraping a single web page using this AIO HTTP, which you have just installed a while back. So as you can see here, this is the importing that's being done. And once that's done, what this piece of code is doing is it's actually, first of all, printing the status of that web page. So you obviously have an HTTP response and you have the status from it. So 200 is the status, means the page is up. If you do this for a page that's down and it's not operational, then it's going to return 404, right? So obviously in that case, the scraping is going to work as well. So you can also get the response headers from it, and in this case, it's going to be the content type, as you can see, that we're going to get back. The content type here is a text or HTML, and then it's going to the response text that's going to get passed into HTML, and from there you can get the first 50 elements. So these are just the first 50 characters, but I can actually increase it to say 150, and you'll get a much bigger part of the response here. So starting from here, there are actually 150 characters, and this is nothing but the part of the HTML code that's coming from the source code of the web page, right? So the site we have passed here in this code is python.org. If I just jump into this and I just jump into the source code here, the element section that goes right at the top. So the 150 elements from here is essentially what's getting printed out here, right? This in itself is not very useful, right? But this is the starting point. So this is giving you the entire element of the source code. If you wanted it to, you can just increase the number of elements here. It's going to give you that many number of HTML elements from the source code. But what you really want is specific elements. We're going to come to that. But let's first look at how we can do this for multiple pages first. This very same thing that we just did here. Because we don't just want one page. Sometimes we want to get it for a lot of competitor sites, suppose, right? So the logic behind it, so this is what's called a pseudocode. So this just explains the logic that's working in the backend. So this is a for loop, and essentially what it's doing is it's grabbing the sessions and the URLs, and it's going to you're going to have to write a function. Of course, that function is going to make use of these as arguments, and that the output of that is going to get appended in the tasks list, which is simply an empty list to start with. So that's what it's going to do, right? It's going to get the session details and the URL, and it's going to get appended in the tasks. And so the function is essentially the one which is going to tell what task it's going to be. In our case, it's going to be getting the HTML code from the body, or you can say the entire source code. So if I just run the actual function here, that actual function, as you can see here, is web scraper, and once that's been written, it's going to essentially do this. It's going to store the raw HTML data, and the raw HTML data, as you can see, some for loops and if statements are written here, and it's going to save the raw details from the HTML from the master dict, and it's going to pass the URL in it. So the master dict here is the variable that's going to be working in the backend, and yeah. So once I run this part, so now this is going to create a list of URLs, as you can see, rather than just one URL. It's going to now work on multiple URLs, and I've passed the agency's name that I work with, which is Occident, and then it's python.org, the same link that we saw again. This is, by the way, the official website of Python. So if you want to learn about Python, it's a very good place to get started. But yeah, once again, you don't really have to learn Python in order to do web scraping. You can make use of this code here. Again, web scraping for free, largely for free. If of course it goes beyond, if it's a huge number of URLs that you're trying to scrape, then you have to make use of then the disk space that you're going to use up is going to exceed the free limit, and then you have to once that threshold has been breached, then you have to obviously go for a paid upgrade for the disk space that you're using. Obviously, it's Google Drive that you're using here, so Google storage space. Then you have to buy more cloud storage space from Google, but otherwise it's entirely free. So the package is like Beautiful Soup. These are actually free. I mean, unless you do some really complicated stuff, maybe at an advanced level there can be some charges somewhere, but in most cases, for your purposes, I'm pretty sure if you're not doing something absolutely insanely crazy, then this should be just fine. It should be free. So it's going to do the same thing again, get hold of the entire raw HTML data, and then just give it back for you to use. So if I just do this, it's going to go through both the websites, scrape the entire raw HTML, the thing that we actually see in the source code, like I showed here. There's an entire source code part that's available in the element section in the Chrome Developer Tools, and then it's going to just give it back. And if I just look at go right at the top here, the output. So like I said, the output is the main thing that you're seeing a lot of stuff here that's going on in the back end, but most of the stuff here is just the output, not really the input code. So you don't really have to write all of that. So as you can see, doc type here, and you can actually get both the websites. So if I just if you just search this piece of code here, I'm not doing that here. If in order for me not to make the video too long, in order to make it watchable within a certain limit. So you can actually test that it's actually getting the data for both the websites here. So as you can see your Occident, and somewhere down there will be the Python site as well, the python.org. And again, so this is getting all the data. And if I were to write something like so this is actually I've changed it a little bit from the original code. I'm getting all this, scraping all the data. But if you just wanted to see the length, for instance, of the list, so you see the number of URLs that is available within it, just to give an idea of what's really going on in the backend. So you see that it's returning 2, and that's because there are 2 entities or elements within the URLs variable here, which has been passed to the scraper variable, which is which then we are trying to get the all the data from. So now we're going to use the parsing logic. So I just talked about parsing a little while back. Parsing is simply getting hold of the individual elements within the HTML code. It breaks down the HTML code into different constituent parts or blocks, and then you're going to try and get the output from it, or make use of it in any way you want. So for instance, it could be useful for SEO, like the original creators of the code have written, or for HTML content analysis. Then you can run this web scraper class. Again, it's going to be carrying out a very similar sort of thing, storing the raw data, but in this case, it's going to do now the getting the title. So if you just compare it with the previous piece of code here, this was just the raw HTML, and the entire HTML was being extracted. So you are now trying to get the HTML, but you're going to try to get the title from it, right? So if I just run the next piece of code here, that's essentially going to fetch the titles from the 2 pages, as you can see. So if once again a URL is there, I mean a for loop is there over the URL variable, and it's going to get the title for each of the URLs that have been passed previously. So the URLs variable obviously had these 2. So any number of URLs you actually provide is going to get the title for it, right? So this is, by the way, this is added by me. In the original code, this was just a piece of a couple of lines code, which actually was for getting the data from an individual URL. But I just updated it a little bit, of course, with with help from the internet, whichever way I could think of. And again, I'm not a super expert in Python, but I just know enough to get it to work for me for some really cool stuff, and basically for automating stuff, for analysis and all. And this is how I can get the titles for these 2 web pages. And the way this really worked is to update this section here. So instead of just going to the URLs to grab the raw data and the titles from it, instead of doing that, this time it tried to grab the meta descriptions. All right. But as you can see here, you had to update both the web scraper function as well as the iteration code. So once that's been done, and the meta descriptions have been brought. So the agents that I work for here, it doesn't actually explicitly use any meta description here, as we obviously have reasons for it, but you do get the meta description here from the python.org site as well. So so this is what I really had to show. This is how you can get started with web scraping. But yeah, there are a couple of caveats here, a couple of things to really look out for. So there are certain dependencies on package compatibilities and all of that. So you're going to have to make sure that the Google Colab is compatible with the kind of versions that you're trying to install for the different packages and all of that stuff. So sometimes this is basically installing thing, the pip part. So if there might be certain requirements for certain packages and the versions. Sometimes these do not match, there clashes, and then it's not really possible to do it, and then you run into errors. So you have to be able to be, just be a little flexible here, walk around and look for stuff and try and fix it. So if you have that sort of problem-solving mentality, then this should not be too difficult to do. Like I said, sometimes you will run into a problem, but it's perfectly doable and perfectly solvable. But yeah, the main motivation behind it should be the fact that you're doing it for free. You're not unnecessarily paying for something which is relatively small stuff, really, scraping, especially because there are so many tools out there in the market. But honestly speaking, you wouldn't want to really spend, right? I mean, what's the point of paying for something like scraping? There's so much that you really need to pay for. There's so many advanced things that you can actually pay for. um, so yeah, I hope this was useful. This was what I had to present, and I will try to update this code and present a more updated version of it next time, where I'll go deeper into it and try and actually extract information, like say for instance the and this can be your homework. You can actually try and do that. You can try and see if you can figure out a way to grab the the different buttons, the call to action buttons. So this was what I was thinking. I actually pass multiple URLs within the variable for passing, and then it just does the passing job. But instead of just grabbing things like titles and meta descriptions, it grabs the call to action of the button URLs and the button texts, so that you can this can be very useful for performance marketers, because they can see how many competitor you are for how many competitor brands for a particular brand that they're running ads for, what the call to action buttons are like, and what they read, what the text on them reads. So that can be a useful exercise for you guys. I'm going to actually work on that as well whenever I get the time in the next week or so, and I hopefully will be back with that upgraded code as well. But yeah, I mean, this is something that you can definitely put to use and get started with. And do let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions for upcoming videos, do let me know in the comments. And like, share, and subscribe, like I always say. Yeah, perfectly up to you, but that helps me keep coming back with good content. It motivates me, and always there to help you out, help you guys out. And yeah, see you in the next video.